Thanks for choosing us. We are your home of independent, fearless, and credible journalism. Now, President Mahama has this afternoon named another set of ministers, with the Member of Parliament for Tamale South, Haruna Idrisu, heading to the Ministry of Education. Now, we will bring you reactions from sector players shortly, but first, let's introduce you to the faces behind the names and provide their brief profiles, because we're just looking at what they bring to the table and some of their expertise. We know that Jifa Gomashi will be going to the creative arts industry, and that's what we're looking forward to, her performance. But all these are nominations. They will have to go through the vetting process and then be approved before they assume their role. We also know that, if you recall, he released the names of 10 different regions, the regional ministers for 10 different regions. And now we know that he has released the list of 3 other regional ministers. And so we'll be looking into that shortly. But let me give you a brief profile of some of the names that have come up. I told you about Haruna Idrisu. He is Minister Designate for the Education Ministry. And so we would be delving into his expertise and what exactly that sector requires, and if he is indeed the man for the job. Also, Eric Opoku, he is going also to another ministry, which is the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. We also have Kwame Govins Abuja, Minister Designate for Roads and Highways. I told you about Abla Jifa Gomashi. She is now the Minister Designate for Tourism, Culture and Creative Arts. She has occupied that role before, and so we're looking forward to what difference she'll be bringing on board this time. We also have Elizabeth Ofosu Ajare, Minister Designate for Trade, Agribusiness and Industry. Now, for Gender, Children and Social Protection, that ministry has been quite silent for a while. But this time, Agnes Namomolate has been nominated for that role. We'll be looking forward to what exactly her plan for that ministry would be when she appears before the Appointments Committee to be vetted. Also, we are seeing a lot of women in this list. Emilia Alta, Minister Designate for Fisheries and Aquaculture. That ministry was once being headed by Hawa Kumsin, and so we're looking forward to what she'll be bringing on board. We also have Ahmed Ibrahim, Minister Designate for Local Government, Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs. We also have George Opariado, Minister Designate for Youth Development and Empowerment. So let's go into the different profiles, and today on the polls we are focusing on 3 key sectors: the educational sector, agriculture and trade. And so we're looking at the profile of the Minister Designate for that Education Ministry, Haruna Idrisu. Now, we know him as the former minority leader. He was also a former Minister for Employment and Labor Relations, former Communications Minister, former Trades and Industry Minister. He was also a member, in fact, he's still currently a member of the Ghana Bar Association. Well, I told you he was the former minority leader. He's a barrister at law. He's also the MP for Tamale South since the year 2004, one of the longest serving members of Parliament. Then we have Kwame Govins Abuja. He is Minister Designate for Roads and Highways. He's a chartered architect with extensive experience. He's MP for Adaklu. He has a qualification from Westminster University. He is also the principal consultant for K Partners Limited. He is the member of the Royal Institute of British Architects. He is a member of the Ghana Institute of Architects. He's also the Majority Chief Whip for the 9th Parliament, the Minority Chief Whip. He occupied that position for the 8th Parliament. Now, let's move on to the Agric Ministry. Eric Opoku is vying for that position. He's an expert in law, agriculture, and leadership. He has an LLM, an international business law, University of Essex in the UK. He has a BA in economics and law from KNUST. He's a ranking member, Food and Agriculture Committee in Parliament. So this is a time for us to look at what these nominees bring on board. We'll be focusing on all the nominees here on the Joy News channel, but on the polls today, we're looking at 3 different ministries: education, agri, and trade. We're looking at what exactly they bring to the table. Now, for now, let's assess the nominees and what exactly they bring into the table. We'll start with the Education Ministry. Kofi Asare joins me now. He leads Africa Education Watch. I just want to get his initial reaction to Haruna Idris's nomination for the role of Education Minister. Are you pleased, though? You might have to unmute, Kofi, so that I can hear you loud and clear.
I'm not muted. I'm not muted.
Okay. Please make your point. I wanted your reaction. Haruna Idrisu head into the Education Ministry. Are you pleased with his nomination? Do you think he's the man for the job?
Yes. I'm asking if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you very much, and good afternoon to your audience. I think it's refreshing noting that the sector has received a nomination by the president. The president actually has appointed Secretary to the Fall of Parliament, Honorable Haruna Idrisu. We in the education community are happy that we have a minister, and we are ready to support the minister, work with him to implement the government agenda, and to ensure that education outcomes improve.
Now, let's look at his expertise. We know him as the former minority leader, but he's not an educationist, so are you worried?
No, not at all. Education is not a business for educationists only. So people normally, misconstrue education to be a sector meant for educationists. It's never true. I, for instance, I'm not an educationist. I've never done education in my life before, but I'm doing education policy, right? So having worked with the ministry since 2004, I worked with Honorable Barnard when he was minister. Obviously, I was on the CSO side, and he wasn't an educationist. He was a chartered accountant. And arguably, he's one of the best ministers that I ever worked with. And so it is not the case that you might have to be an educationist, to manage education policy well. Education business in public policy, in public sector, is actually much more a matter of public policy management and leadership than being an education expert or an educationist. And so to the extent that, or the extent to which the president's nominee is amenable to the basic tenets of inclusive policy governance, appreciates, public policy, fundamental canons of transparency, accountability, responsiveness, spending efficiency, value for money, and appreciates the centrality of human capital development to the nation development. I think that he will succeed. It is not, and it's also about using the technocrats available to the advantage of policy. The sector has many experts, okay? And so as a minister, you have to be a good manager of all the expertise available to the benefit of the entire education sector. And that is what an education minister is supposed to do. It's not necessarily teacher or an educationist.
Now, the previous administration, they prioritized education, and it was clear in how they allocated their finances in the budget. However, we're looking at the challenges that this administration may have to deal with. What is Haruna going to be looking forward to fixing in that ministry based on where you sit?
In the past 7 years, we saw education, occupying pride of place in government policy, government budget priorities. That is true. Education received averagely 19% of public expenditure between 2017 and 2023. It is partly because the then president, had education high on his agenda. And it is also because the then Minister of Education himself was an advocate for education. If you want to succeed in that seat, you must be an advocate for education. You must make the strong case at cabinet for increased resourcing of education. And so the advocacy role of the minister, as you rightly said, is very, very fundamental in ensuring that you are able to lobby, you're able to mobilize, you're able to influence the allocation of resources in favor of education and in favor of executing the 140 plus promises that the NDC has made in their education manifesto. So advocacy and policy influencing, resources influencing is key to the success of the incoming Minister of Education. And I think that having been in Parliament for all this while and understanding the centrality and essence of advocacy and being an advocate himself for good governance and all that, one expects that he should use his experience in lobbying and influencing gained over the years in Parliament, to influence and lobby for more resourcing of education policies, especially in an equitable manner, such that the most deprived districts and regions in education, talk about the 5 northern regions, Western North and East, receive their fair share of the education kit, especially in respect of education infrastructure, teachers, and teaching and learning resources, so that we are able to bridge the gap between the rural and urban areas in education service provision. And so being an advocate for education and having experience in influencing resources, budgets, and policies and all that is key to the success of the incoming Minister of Education.
Now, one of the flagship programs for the previous administration, the free SHS policy, has come under criticism. Many feel that it ought to be reviewed. Looking at your expectation for this administration and with Haruna, should he go through the vetting process and be approved, would be heading that ministry. What are the key things you feel could be looked at, especially because this administration has served notice that they will be roping in the private sector into the policy?
Well, the NDC manifesto is clear. 3 big tickets in secondary education. 1 is to end double track. 2 is to decentralize the procurement and management of foodstuff under Free Senior High School. And 3 is to expand the Free Senior School program to include the private sector. And so the work of the Minister of Education is clearly cut out. So we are expecting that the minister will commence by, convening the education conference, which is also in the 100 days or 120-day covenant of the flag bearer or the president. And so he should immediately convene the education conference and discuss the strategies for rolling out these, promises. I say strategies for rolling out because, you see, there's a difference between a promise and a policy. The process from promise to policy is a technical process, and it must be managed in a way that aligns with the education strategy plan, and that makes policy sense. And one of the work that Africa Education Watch is doing with the new administration, with support from the FCDU, is to support the government to transition its education promises into policy in a manner that aligns with the broad education strategic plan 2018 to 2030. And so I'm expecting that the minister will, after approval by Parliament, convene the education conference and then use that platform to discuss the strategies to go about in ending the double track, decentralizing the feeding of free senior high school, and including primary schools into the senior high school, free senior high school policy. Based on that, a policy and a roadmap should be issued so that all stakeholders have a fair idea about how government intends to progress. In doing this, we expect that the ministry will be inclusive, that the ministry will take advantage of the support of other organizations and development partners to shape, the approach it intends to adapt to implement these policies in a manner that the implementation process doesn't truncate anything unduly as part of the ongoing free senior high school policy. But then the approach becomes a gradual process of phasing out. For instance, if you want to decentralize the feeding in senior high schools, it doesn't become a simple fiat, as a simple administrative fiat of issuing directive that no more this, no, but it becomes a gradual rolling out of a process to decentralize feeding so that you do not truncate the centralized process that we have currently. You don't truncate it suddenly in a manner that affects food shortages in schools. And so all these are things that we believe will be discussed by stakeholders at the education conference that we are expecting the ministry and the minister to convene at the earliest convenience once he is approved by Parliament.
Thank you, Kofi Asare. He is Executive Director for Africa Education Watch. Now, let me bring in Thomas Musa. He is General Secretary of NAT. Thank you so much for your time here on The Pulse. Your initial reaction, Education Minister nominee Haruna Idrisu.
Very much. Good afternoon to yourself and to your listeners. Yes, I think I met Haruna in the 90s, specifically at the University of Ghana Commonwealth. I was in Commonwealth 4, and that was where we met. And particularly regarding his contribution when he became the NUCS president. And at the time, we were then confronted with this policy of academic user facility fee and all that. And it was even this time that it became necessary that we start fighting for the GET fund, as education trust fund or whatever we may call it. And thank God that today we have the GET fund. So I believe that the challenges that confronted tertiary education and that his administration saw, and we led series of demonstrations and all that, and today we have the GET fund. I believe that the same challenge is confronting basic education in Ghana today, where capitation grant is in arrears for over 2 years. The school feeding is in arrears. We are deceiving ourselves that we are feeding children on 1 cedi, 50 pesos a cedi, 1 cedi, 50 pesos a day. We are owing WAEC, the government subvention that must go to all the SHS, the education, the district education offices and all that. All those things are not good. So I believe that the number one thing that we are all expecting is how we can get sustainable funding for basic education. And I believe that given his rich experience, both in his student days and also having worked in the government space for all these years, I don't think Haruna is well experienced, and we hope that you bring his experience to bear on all those things and make sure that he leaves a very good legacy for himself and for his career. Yeah.
Now, the free SHS policy is one that many have called for a review. As this new government takes office, they've also served notice that they'll be roping in the private sector. What's your expectation of the minister designate should he assume office?
Yes, I think we are all clear. Number one, the free SHS, it has come to stay. For me, my understanding is that the free SHS, there are parents and families that cannot afford. And so they must be taken care of. And that is why even we have the LEAP and all that. In every society, you don't expect everybody to be treated equally. So we believe in the equity principle. The equity principle gives to each person according to his needs or his requirement. That is what we believe. So the VSHS has come to stay. And I believe that during the consultative forum, that the discussion that we'll be having, all these things will come to fore as to how we intend to address the review we are talking about. And let us all get it clear. Well, the review that people are calling for is specifically from the point of view of the Ghana National Association of Teachers. We published a book on this particular thing as far back as 2017. We did a research on it, and we said, look, the equality principle is not the way to go. The equity principle is the way to go, and it's to ensure that we get this particular policy to be sustainable. And so if on this particular point we think that we need to bring in people, we even went ahead to recommend, now look, let us see how best we can provide some, put certain percentage of increase on the VAT to take care of basic education. We have also recommended that the Heritage Fund, how can we actually make some funds available from it specifically to basic education. We look at the issue of property rate, among other things, all in attempt of making sure that we'll be able to rake in a revenue to really shape basic education. Because if we don't do that, we'll end up creating a class society where those who have will have, those who don't have, they'll continue to be poorer. And we must all take note that the only weapon known in human history that we can use to break poverty is education.
Okay. Thank you so much, Thomas Musa. He is General Secretary of NAT. Let's also shift our attention now to another crucial sector, the trade sector, with stakeholders such as the Ghana Union Traders Association, all in that sector, as well as the Ghana Institute of Freight Forwarders and the Importers and Exporters Association, raising significant concerns and expectations in that sector. Elizabeth Ofosu-Adjare has been nominated to lead that ministry, and we're wondering what she brings to the table. Well, on your screens now is her profile. She's a lawyer, an international relations expert. She is the former Minister for Tourism, Culture and Creative Arts. She has an LLB from the University of Ghana. She has a BA in Social Science from KNUST. Well, let's go on Zoom now and speak to the president of GUTA, Joseph Obeng. Thank you so much, Doc, for your time here on The Pulse. I also have joining me via Zoom, Jacob Ajiman. He's spokesperson for the Ghana Institute of Freight Forwarders. Thank you so much for your time here on The Pulse. Now, I'll start with you, Dr. Joseph Obeng. What are your expectations of this ministry, even as the president has released the list of his nominee to chair that ministry?
Yeah, we are very happy to have Madam on board. And we are expecting that she follows suit to the other women predecessors like Emma Mitchell and Hannah Tete. And they all delivered. We have encounter with these ministers, and they actually delivered and performed. That's why I'm very happy to see a woman coming back. Because normally they are very receptive and very accommodative. And I believe that we are going to have a very good encounter or cooperation with Madam as she assumes office of the Trade Ministry. And as she's coming, we are also prepared to give our support to her, if only she also adopts an open door attitude towards all the stakeholders.
What are the immediate challenges that you feel she must address should she assume office?
Yeah, so you see, the Trade Ministry is where we channel all our grievances. So sometimes, if you are not careful, you think that they are overlapping some of their functions. Because when you talk at the port, the port is supposed to go under the transport ministry. When you talk about high cost of doing business, it also goes under the finance ministry and all that, the taxes that we pay and all that. But that's the center point for us, the traders, because that's our center minister, and we are going to engage there in these diverse areas. So we are, what is very much expectant of her is to how to move us from mere trading to captains of industry. That's what, because now that we are talking about import substitution, that should be the major preoccupation of the of government policy towards trading, that we migrate from importation into manufacturing. And so I think it's going to be one of the core issues and all that. There are issues about foreigners in the retail trade. You know, it's never leaving us unless we revise the investment laws and also make serious enforcement of the laws that foresees these people. And so these are the critical areas that we are going to look at. Access to credit, as I've said, you don't know whether to place this under the ministry or place it under the finance ministry, but definitely it's under the finance ministry. But we channel these grievances also to them, because you know the women in trade and how we are seeking funds for them. It means that she's going to have a critical role in this women's bank thing and all that, and our women food will definitely depend on her. So we welcome her, and then we are also going to think about how to restructure our markets and also ensure that we have satellite markets to decongest the markets. It has been a problem, because if you look at the perennial fire outbreaks and all that, is due to the fact that our markets are so concentrated and then congested. So how are we going to also find resources and then also modify our markets and make satellite markets to decongest, and then also put these fire outbreaks behind us. So all these things will come under the purview of the incoming trade minister. But definitely, I'm very excited to work with the woman again, because we had success with the Hannah Tete. She was just fantastic. Emma Mitchell, if you have heard about her, was also just so fantastic. So I pray that she follows these great women and also perform to our expectation.
Okay, thank you, Joseph, for being. Now, let me bring in Jacob Ajiman. Your initial thoughts about her nomination?
Good afternoon to our listeners. Yes, we congratulate her for her nomination, especially she being a woman. We trust that she will bring that soft aspect of leadership and management that will help promote the trade and industry ministry. So our initial thought, congratulations to her, and we wish her the best. Yes.
What are the key challenges you feel she should immediately address should she assume her role as minister?
Immediately, we expect her to look at the challenge. One of the challenges we expect her to look at is the shipping line administrative cost or charge. As Dr. Obi rightly said, in some cases, you may assume that some of these things will fall under trade, some will fall under finance, some will fall under transport. But the overall responsibility basically is about trade and industry. So we as freight forwarders, we expect that immediately she must tackle the issue of shipping line local administrative charge. This is a charge that no liner shipping company should charge any importer importing commodities into Ghana, because the freight that any importer pays to the shipping company comprises of all the local charges over here. So when an importer pays the freight, all the importer needs to do is present his bill of lading or her bill of lading to the shipping line through his freight forwarder or her freight forwarder and take delivery of his goods. However, the practice in our country is totally different. Shipping lines in Ghana, all shipping lines in Ghana, they charges what you call local administrative fee. This practice has gone on over 20 years and it keeps happening and it keeps going higher and higher. In 2021, Temaport alone did about 1.2 million containers in just that year. Averagely, a shipping line at that time charges about 5,000 Ghana cedis per 20-footer container. Now, if you multiply 1.2 million containers by 5,000 Ghana cedis, that gives you more than 6 billion Ghana cedis. If you do the conversion into dollars by even today's rate, it gives you not less than $300 million per year. This is illegitimate monies shipping lines are taking or collecting from Ghanaian traders that must stop. We expect the trade minister to lead advocacy through the Ghana Shippers Authority to put a stop to these arbitrary charges. That is one. Two, we expect to help fight the arbitrary exchange rate applied by the same shipping lines. Bank of Ghana can issue an exchange rate of, let's say, 15 cedis to a dollar. This is just an assumption. The shipping lines can apply 16.5, 17 Ghana cedis to a dollar. This practice must stop. Thirdly, we expect her to help fight the infiltration of foreigners in clearing and forwarding. If you read the Customs Act 891/2015, Section 43(1), it tells us that clearing and forwarding is the indigenous business or is business for indigenous Ghanaians. Why are we having foreigners doing clearing and forwarding? Why are we having Lebanese, Chinese, Burkinabes, Ivorians, Nigerians doing clearing and forwarding in our ports? This practice must stop. And these are the areas we expect her immediately to tackle. On the long term, the other issues we will consider when we sit on the round table. But immediately, these are things we expect her to tackle.
Okay, thank you so much, Jacob Ajiman. Let's move on to the agricultural sector. It plays a crucial role in the economy, and Eric Opoku has been nominated as a minister designate for that ministry. Now on your screens now is his profile. He's an expert in law, agriculture, and leadership. He has an LLM, international business law from the University of Essex in UK. He has a BA in economics and law from KNUST. He's ranking member of Food and Agricultural Committee. Let me bring in Edward Caraway just to get their thoughts as an association, because I know that he is the former president of the General Agricultural Workers Union. Thank you so much for your time. Let me get your initial reaction. Eric Opoku, is he the man for the job? You may have to unmute for me so that I can hear you, Edward. I just wanted to get your initial reaction. We have been told that indeed the president has nominated Eric Opoku for the minister as minister designate for food and agriculture. And so I'm just looking forward to hearing your initial reaction to his nomination. I'm hoping I have better connection to you now, Edward. What are your initial reactions?
Yeah, good afternoon and good evening to all those who are watching us and listening to us. I think if you look at the Honorable Eric Opoku, he's a seasoned agriculturalist, and he's also a seasoned politician, you know, to the extent that he has been in Parliament before, came out and then returned to Parliament, and he has participated extensively on food and agri committees, and his work in the public discourse whilst he was in opposition, was very visible. And I think that he has got a good understanding of the agricultural sector, apart from the fact that he himself is an agriculturalist, he's a farmer, and he has participated in policy making discourse regarding agriculture.
And what are your key expectations of her as an industry player?
Well, again, we need to break down the agriculture sector, and I think that his main focus should be to break down the agriculture sector and deal with it decisively, because the agriculture sector is so huge and so also diverse. It is not homogeneous, so he must do that. And then the next stage is for him to, whilst having that activity, he must consult the stakeholders there, because of the diverse nature of it. Much as he has good understanding of the agricultural sector, it cannot be said that his ministry alone knowledge is sufficient to address the challenges that are there. So these are immediate things, because so much has been pumped into the agricultural sector and it has gone into the drain. And we think that it should not be the case this time round. So to be able to ensure that we do not create waste is to make sure that from day one, the leakages that are there, which swallow all the resources and knowledge and disregard dissenting views, are all plugged. So he needs to do that immediately. So consultation with the stakeholders is key before he even assumes office.
Thank you so much for your time here on The Pulse. Now, we will be bringing you some updates on a new audit by PURC on the operations of ECG and what exactly it says after this quick breather. Please stay tuned. Thanks for staying with us here on The Pulse. Now, a new audit into the operations of State Power Distribution Company, ECG, shows that ECG under-declared revenue to the cash waterfall mechanism by a whopping more than 1 billion Ghana cedis. Now, the cash waterfall mechanism, if you know, was implemented as far back as 2020 in April as part of the energy sector recovery program to ensure fairness and transparency in distributing energy revenues among electricity distribution companies. Now, according to the audit conducted by PricewaterhouseCoopers, ECG also operates more than 80 different bank accounts. And this is despite an IMF conditionality that ECG ought to operate a single account. Well, joining me in the studio is my colleague, a leading member of the Joy Research Desk, Isaac Kufeje. Thank you so much for your time. Isaac, let's go into this document, the audit report. Specifically, it says that ECG under-declared their revenue for the cash waterflow mechanism by more than 1 billion Ghana cedis. Why exactly? So
first, I think we have to situate the conversation or the report. This was a validation report by the PwC of ECG's revenues, and it was the last quarter of 2024. And per the report, according to what they found out, ECG's reported revenue within that period was 3.38 billion Ghana cedis. And when they validated that revenue, what they found out was that it was more. It was actually 3.87 million Ghana cedis. So if you do the math, the difference should be about 490 million Ghana cedis. That is the difference that we are talking about in terms of the report, the revenues captured by ECG versus the validation report, what was found out. Now, if you go further to talk about that 1.14 billion that you were talking about, that will be when you compare ECG's reported revenue to the cash waterfall to, let's say, their own bank statements, right? That was when you see that huge difference of 1.14 billion Ghana cedis. If you compare that same revenue that ECG reported in their revenue sheets to the cash waterfall mechanism, then you're talking about 600 million Ghana cedis. So one, indicator, you could see that different figures were reported by the ECG. You can find different figures in ECG's, revenue sheets different figures in ECG's cash waterfall mechanism report, different figures in ECG's bank statement. We do not know why there are these, we kind of like experiencing these discrepancies, but according to the report, this is what we find at the moment.
And then it also shows us that the ECG is operating over 80 bank accounts. This is contrary to the IMF conditionality that they ought to operate a single bank account. Tell us more.
I mean, the PRC was the first to talk about this numerous bank account being operated by the ECG. I think as at that time that the PRC was talking about, they were quoting 61 bank accounts, if my memory serves me right. Now, this is a backdated report looking at the last quarter of 2024, definitely quoting 84 different bank accounts that ECG is operating, making it very difficult to track all their transactions and inflows. And you are right, the directive or under the new energy sector recovery program, one of the suggestion or one of the recommendation was to have a centralized account by the ECG so that you can track almost everything that comes to ECG. What we are also learning is that the discrepancy doesn't just exist in this new report that has been released. If you look at the ECG's audited report captured by the state-owned enterprise, 2023 report, in terms of ECG's debt, the value quoted was somewhere around 447 billion Ghana cedis. But if you go to ECG's own audited report, you could find 56 billion Ghana cedis. The difference is very, very huge. In terms of the losses for 2023, ECG in its own financial document or audited financial report was quoting 10 billion Ghana cedis. If you go to the SOE 2023 report, you find somewhere 5.96 billion Ghana cedis. So we are still trying to understand why there are some of these huge discrepancies in terms of the numbers being reported by ECG.
Let me bring in Dubik Mahama. He used to head ECG. Thank you so much for your time here on The Pulse. I'd like to get your initial reaction to this report. Why exactly are there discrepancies when it comes to the revenue accrued and the revenue reported?
So, thank you for having me. The issue is quite simple. You have a management that is always trying to explain a story, and then you have a group of people that have their own opinion about what it should be. I went through, when your people contacted me, they then forwarded me the PwC report. The first thing that should have pricked everybody's mind is there is no management report or management statement after the audit, which is quite odd. Because all of these things that were raised should be able to be explained in the management report. Now, when you say someone underdeclares 1.1 billion, in truth, the 1.1 billion that has been underdeclared, definitely there's a digital flow. They should be able to, the report should be able to say what that 1.1 was used for. If you leave it as has been underdeclared and leave it hanging, it makes it leaves a lot to be desired. I would like for there to be a proper explanation, or there is a proper explanation, and I think we should all ask for that.
So that's why I'm asking you for that. What is your proper explanation to these discrepancies?
I left office in September. What you're talking about is the last quarter of 2020. I don't want to speculate. I want to help your show for us to all get to an informed decision. Okay. I want us to guide the conversation because this is a national issue. We want to get to the solution of the matter. Now, when you come and say ECG has I heard your researchers say they have how many bank accounts? 86 or what? What I would say to that is that number is even small. We are doing our best to bring it down. You cannot have a digital payment platform and let me make it practical enough. Let me make it very practical. If you're collecting money in Asankregwa, do you have to use a bank account in Accra to collect the money in Asankregwa? You can't. If you're collecting money in Seshuvi also, do you have to use an account in Accra to collect money in Seshuvi also? You can't. So if ECG has accounts in areas, they all collect, but they are all swept into a single collection account.
And let me make that clear. ECG does have one single collection. Maybe we should call it one single settlement account. As for the collection accounts, if you reduce them, you are going to make the work very difficult. There are accounts that will collect. And thanks to the GIBS platform, thanks to the RTGS platform of Bank of Ghana, all those monies are swept into one single settlement account by the close of day. So please, let's verify that. And it's quite shocking that the report doesn't have that in there. That in as much as there are these accounts just collect the day-to-day, but within 24 hours, all of those monies are swept into the single collection account. So that one leaves that with that statement. But in truth, for ECG to run on a daily basis or on a monthly basis, ECG needs, last I checked, ECG needs almost 600 million Ghana cedis to run efficiently. If ECG is to comply by the cash waterfall directly, ECG will have financial constraints seriously. Let's not forget that when this proposal came for the single collection account, that everything should be moved in, ECG already had financial obligations to the banks. And let's also not forget that there's also a cost of collection. We need to look at this holistically than to just take a statement and say they underdeclared by 1.1. That 1.1 is
this
not
report, this audit report, if you allow me coming at this point, this audit report is for the last quarter of 2023. And as of 2023, you were still heading that ministry.
Okay, all right. I was heading the company, not the ministry. Now, if this 2023, then that would be the best period where Forex was stable. So within the time we started, we were paying everybody well. I remembered very well that within that period, if my memory serves me right, we had to purchase fuel. We were given instructions to purchase fuel to keep the lights on. We also had staff, that we had to pay. Look, I'm not going to try to trivialize this matter, but we were given a job to do. We didn't underdeclare because we wanted to underdeclare. And within the same period from
but I just want us to deal with the major issues in this report, this audit report. Since we're dealing with the year 2023, and you were heading the company as at that time, why is there discrepancies in such a way that you underdeclare the revenue collected for the cash waterfall mechanism? I just want an explanation.
I am explaining to you that I'm saying we couldn't actually give all the money back because as at the time we were given the instructions to start the new cash waterfall or operate the single collection account, there were already standing obligations on ECG. You just don't move a company from operating its own laser pay system and say, go and operate a single collection account. For example, there were liens on the account. There were cost of collections on certain accounts. There were also obligations to staff. There were loans that the company was repaying. So because we've moved to the single collection account, we have to renege on our obligations to the banks? No. Again, when that actually happens, you now then have to make sure that you do right by actually taking what belongs to you. But in that regard, if we even take what belongs to us, or let's say per the percentage, you take what belongs to ECG, ECG will still be in a hole. Now, let me broaden this conversation as to why the whole cash waterfall mechanism needs to be looked at in this intricate circumstance. Under PURC, ECG is supposed to collect 2 billion, 2 billion Ghana cedis monthly. Currently, ECG is languishing around 1.3, 1.4 billion. My sister, if you collect all that 2 billion, if ECG were to even be collecting 100%, will ECG still be able to pay the energy sector bills? No. The answer is no. And it's no because what? There's a Forex implication in there. There's a Forex implication in there that is not properly handled. So we can look at it in its totality. I would like to ask you a quick question, so you correct me. You if you quite remember 2 or 3 days or somewhere last week, with the transition team, they said Gridco said ECG, the country needs about 4,400 megawatts, right? Wasn't that the case?
We'll have to verify that information for you, but please make the point.
Yeah, but whenever you hear 4,400 megawatts, naturally your mind will go to ECG. Not so. The ECG is the consumer of that 4,400 megawatts. But I sit here to tell you that ECG at peak uses only 2,500 megawatts. So there's a major discrepancy in the whole sector that has to be looked at in terms of in terms of revenue and how it's allocated. But the truth of the matter is, and I'll continue to say it, and I'll say it in defense of the company ECG. If ECG declares 100% of its total revenue to the cash waterfall, ECG will not be able to operate efficiently.
Let me come in at this point, and even before I let my colleague Kofi AJ also come in as well, I just wanted to find out why exactly we're operating 84 different bank accounts, especially because we know that as part of our IMF conditionalities, we also operate a single account, that way we can properly track our finances.
You were not listening to me. We are operating a digital platform. I said, you can't use a bank account in Accra to collect revenue in Asankregwa. Do you agree with me? Before I move forward. You can't use a bank account.
I can't agree with you,
now,
but please make your point.
Pardon?
Please make your point.
So, okay, no problem. ECG has how many districts? ECG has over 90-something districts in its operational zones. Let's say you even want to send impress to each district. How would you send it if you don't operate a bank account over there? There are serious operational conversations that go broader than what we think. But then I said something to you. Collection is different from settlement. What the World Bank wanted and the IMF wanted was for a single settlement account. The terminology has been used loosely. Collection, loosely. We collect through all of these accounts, we settle in one bank account. That is the conversation. So the answer to your question is, yes, those 82 bank accounts do collect for ECG nationwide, but they settle in one bank account. That is how come they can check where it is. We cannot use one single bank account to collect. Again, if we even do one single bank account, that's a concentration risk. Nobody operates a business like that.
Now, Dubik, at this point, I would want to ask a question on the fuel supply, payment discrepancies. And I'm seeing this data here. If you look at ECG's record on the amount you claim you paid for fuel supply in this period under review, you quoted 136.74 million Ghana cedis. Now, according to the validation reports you gave to the cash waterfall mechanism, or what you declared to the cash waterfall mechanism, that is 18.2 million Ghana cedis. The difference is really, really huge. So how did we come up with such discrepancies?
So fuel purchases are not an instant. They are not instant. They are ongoing, and it's based on what you've agreed upon. So maybe I'll say this with a huge maybe. Maybe as at the time that the team was reporting back to reporting back to PURC, it was a process. But with the PURC, it is what you have paid that they would acknowledge because it's validation. They are trying to validate. So you cannot speak to what you haven't paid yet. So probably we are now in 2024 and this report has come out. So what we did finally pay, maybe we might have even told them that we are paying, but it wasn't captured that way. They wanted to see what we had just paid. So at least this report has given a broader picture of what ECG had to do within that period to keep the lights on.
Now, I mean, the finance ministry is also part of the cash waterfall mechanism, and I know that they are supposed to play a huge role in terms of the shortfalls. And the last time we checked the cash waterfall mechanism validation report, we realized that since August 2023, there are huge payments that the finance ministry is supposed to pay, especially, I mean, you acknowledge that there were certain moments where you had to buy fuel, they gave you the go-ahead to do so, but we know that they've not made such payments since August 2023. Are you also saying that this also, accounted for some of the discrepancies we are seeing at the moment?
Of course, because if ECG, the whole conversation is make those payments and the money will be refunded to you. ECG has written, and hopefully, if it was refunded, it would have reflected. So maybe because it hasn't been refunded, it hasn't reflected. So yes, the Ministry of Finance was supposed to help with the shortfalls. So let's also, I can't speak for the ministry as to whether they did those refunds or they actually helped with the shortfalls.
We're also still trying to understand. I mean, we are comparing your reports, your audited report captured in the SIGA report, 2023 SIGA report. In terms of your liabilities in the SIGA report, we saw 47 billion Ghana cedis. But in your own audited financial report, the figure there is higher, 56 billion Ghana cedis. Also, your losses as captured in the SIGA report was 5.96 billion Ghana cedis. But in your report, your net loss was 10 billion Ghana cedis. Why? Discrepancies all over the place.
Forex. It's the forex loss. It's the cost of production of electricity and also the amount of foreign exchange. Let's not forget, we purchase electricity in dollars, sell it in cedis, and we now have to go get the requisite dollars to purchase on the open market to send back. This discrepancy alone in ECG's 2022 profit and loss, forex loss alone was about 8.5 billion. I think proper scrutiny needs to be given and proper operational conversations need to be had. As I speak to you now, there were some operational audits that I asked for KPMG to do on behalf of the company to be able to establish some of these discrepancies. I'm sure at the right time the company will be able to put it out to be able to make certain statements or certain positions of the company clear to the public.
In fact, there are more discrepancies. For instance, they could not
so
actually...
My brother, before we go on the PwC report, you see, my difficulty with the PwC report is this, the audit report is this. From what I know, I don't know how to explain this. I want to use very simple English. That's why I'm having difficulty here. Okay. So let's say initially when they were about to start, they requested for some level of data that I wasn't comfortable or management of ECG was not comfortable to release.
Why?
So for example,
why exactly were you not comfortable
example, the data they were looking for was for me to give them, let's say, your name, where you live, your meter number, how much you consume on a regular. That is data that, under the data protection laws, I cannot share. So it will end up leading to ECG releasing technical or vital information as to your residential location. And you know, these big companies, if you give them such data, they can mine the data and even tell you where you as a country you're going. I can't do that. I asked, let's give you aggregate data. Okay? That tells you this was how much we purchased, this was how much we received, and this is where we are going. Now, my biggest question is, let's ask ourselves, this PwC report, what does it seek to clarify? Does it seek to clarify how much money came into the single collection account and how much money went out? Or is it seeking to clarify the processes that lead to ECG receiving revenue? Because those are reports that are already done by the company, that have already been done by the company, and the answers are there. So if I look at this report, I have a big difficulty comparing certain things and say this is like for like. This same audit report came once at some point. It didn't have a management response when I was in office. It was sent back for them to redo it. Let's be honest. I want to be able to speak to a document that I understand properly. And I'm having major difficulty because if one of my biggest difficulties is this. If you say revenue has been underdeclared, you should be able to tell in an audit report where the revenue went. But if you leave it hanging, it was underdeclared, and that's it. What are you seeking? So that would just tell me that probably the whole TOR or the terms of reference was to say how much came in, how much did they give, how much did they keep. So if they kept it, why did they keep it? Everybody needs to know why the company kept it.
But Dubik, it looks as if the PwC and PRC are all singing from the same hymn book that you are under-declaring. So isn't this not something
nobody
new,
has
right?
said, I will say it, and I'll say it here, under-declaration is not a criminal offense. Let's be clear.
So was ECG intentional?
Listen, let me finish. Okay. Let me finish. ECG in a month, salaries. Let's look at the salary bill of ECG. Let's look at how much money ECG needs to keep the lights on in your district where you live, with the maintenance that they have to do on the lines. Where is ECG supposed to get that money from? If ECG gives all the money it receives away.
But Dubik, you also will agree that under the cash waterfall mechanism, you are entitled to a component, right?
So if you take that component, if I listen to what you are saying in a stricter sense, then that means I'm waiting for a staff uprising, or I'm waiting for the company to collapse during my watch. Will that be fair? Would it be fair to you where the staff gets up and says they are not being paid?
But nothing also stops you from declaring the actual value to PRC.
But the point is this, right? Nobody said ECG never declared the actual value. But when you declare the value and you tell them what it has been used for, the question is, was it captured? Because I do remember in certain meetings, we telling the PURC, ECG management, exactly what has happened. We have produced we've produced letters to the effect that we had instructions to do A, B, C, and D, but the PURC would not accept it for what it's worth.
In fact, the report actually says that the revenues that you even reported under the cash waterfall mechanism, you did not pay all to the stakeholders, especially the level B category.
But I'm telling you that ECG cannot give everything away.
No, I'm saying that what you even declared to the cash waterfall mechanism, which you agree with me that at that point you are actually taking out what you want to keep, right?
No. At that point, you see, it was even being done around the 22nd of every month.
So if what you declared under the cash waterfall mechanism is equal to what you actually get, then why are there discrepancies?
It can never be equal to.
Exactly my point. That's why my question was, even what you declare under the cash waterfall mechanism, the report says that you don't pay everything to the players.
And I told you that yes, it is true. Because as at the time you have declared, an instruction comes or you owe. So you've agreed that, okay, you've agreed that this month there's 900. Okay, you've told everybody there's 900. As at the time that you're about to pay the 900, you have to pay a fuel supplier. What do? You go ahead and pay the 900 and then the fuel stops and then the country is in darkness. You see, operationally, there are things that hit you left, right, center. And let's be practical. It's nobody's intention to deny industry players what is due them. That's the conversation that we are having right now. Yes, ECG underdeclared. But let's find out why ECG underdeclared. Because money is like that, you cannot just underdeclare for underdeclaration's sake.
So
that is what I'm trying to say. So in a nutshell, I'm admitting to you that yes, ECG underdeclared. And after ECG underdeclaring, I am telling to you that today, that ECG needs about 600 million Ghana cedis a month to run and to run efficiently. We are all complaining about ECG. Everybody wants a meter. Everybody wants service connection. Where is ECG going to get that money from? Because let's not forget, ECG cannot go to the banks and borrow without not going for, under the PFM Act. You need to go and seek clearance. So basically, ECG is working from hand to mouth.
This government is proposing privatizing some key areas of the company. For example, revenue collection. Do you feel that's the way to go to deal with some of the key challenges you just made mention of?
ECG on its own has started some form of private sector participation. I would advise that they look at some of it. The ones that they feel they want to enhance, they enhance. But for me, if the math doesn't add up, the math doesn't add up. If PURC is saying that per the tariff that exists right now, ECG is to collect 2 billion, and let's assume by some miracle ECG is able to collect 2 billion. Will these 2 billion Ghana cedis pay the entire industry players, including the IPPs and the level B? The answer is a big no. And that's because what? The dollar to cedi is not 1:1. The forex issue that plagues the company called ECG is not something that can be overlooked. When government did the PDS concession, there was a letter called CP4, Condition Precedent 4. In Condition Precedent 4, the level of subsidy that was going to be given to, was going to be given to PDS was not what ECG got. PDS was not going to be paying the IPPs. When everybody tells the PDS story, they tell it to suit the narrative. ECG currently is even collecting more than what PDS was attempting to collect. But we are still in what? We are still in a hole. When I took over ECG was making about 450 to 500 million Ghana cedis. Now, after digitizing and changing the work models, ECG is now around 1.3, 1.4. And let's not forget, tariff didn't go up by 100% within a single year. And again, let's not forget, they said the level B people were not being paid. Within the period of that report, from August, September, October, all IPPs, per the agreements and the renegotiations we had, ECG was paying them to the dot. When you move into the following year, around January, February, when the forex started going up, ECG couldn't manage the situation again. There's an argument that says the PURC says the quarterly price adjustment caters for the forex. That is a theoretical exercise. I repeat, it's a theoretical exercise. Why do I say that? You and I can have a transaction today outside. By evening, the forex would have changed. And we all know forex never comes down. So if within 3 months, if you have put the forex at about 13 or 14, and within 3 months, by the time you are coming to do the adjustment, the forex is at 16 or 15, are you going to adjust to suit what has been lost the months before, or are you adjusting to suit what we are going to now collect? If you go to the model that you were talking about, the collection side that they are proposing the privatization, yes, I'll call for a large-scale consultation, because in Uganda, when they were practicing that, on a daily basis, the forex rate is put on your electricity bill. Are we willing to do that to the good people of Ghana? We cannot just follow what we think is supposed to be. We need to sit down and agree and say, okay, 2,500 megawatts, how much would it cost? What is our expectation from ECG? ECG hasn't seen any capital injection since 2008. Meters do expire. Some meters have expired. So how would ECG even be able to get money to replace these meters? Because there are people that I can say on authority are still enjoying tariffs from 2015 because their meters are non-smart. The conversations of the operations are very real. If you are bringing in private sector participation, the private person coming in also needs to know that almost all the inputs within ECG is in USD. It's not in Ghana cedi. If we do not tackle the forex problem to the latter, it will be very, very difficult to actually get some parity in in the collection.
Thank you so much, Dubik Mahama. He is former MD for ECG. Let me just get quick reaction now from Kojo Yauche. He's policy lead for petroleum and conventional energy at the Association of Concerned Energy Producers. Thank you so much for your time here on The Pulse. I just want to get your brief reaction. I know that you've been coming through this report. We've been hearing from Dubik Mahama actually admit that indeed they at some point underdeclared, and he's been given their justification for that. Your reaction?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I think it's very disappointing to hear from Dubik. Maybe he hasn't fully read the report. That is why some of the justifications, in quotes, that he's given for the discoveries in the report doesn't sit well with the issues that are raised in the report. And it also exposes how, because we are not used to putting management of our state-owned enterprises to strict accountability, they are not able to really account to the people on how they manage these entities to deliver value for the people. I mean, the report clearly states what it states. There is a system for the disbursement of revenue or the cash waterfall mechanism. ECG cannot stand unilaterally and decide that I am not going to follow it because I need more money. How about the other players within the space? How would they also survive? Don't they also need money? Haven't they produced power that is being sold? So all of this justification really doesn't sit well. And the report actually exposes the deep-seated mismanagement of ECG that is really bringing the power sector to its feet, for which consumers, the general public, has to consistently be paying through the nose to sustain. And that cannot stand. We really need, and this is just for a quarter in a year, right? In 2023. So imagine what we would uncover in 2024. We actually really need a forensic audit of the operations of this company, not only for the payments and all of it, but a whole systemic audit on if you say you're not paying, what are you using the money for? The second leg of the conversation, what are you using the money for which you are not paying? And the report clearly stated some of them. For example, paying for fuel, for example, is not part of the cash waterfall mechanism. Paying an entity that is collecting revenue on your behalf, for which, hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Please make the point.
A service provider who you have contracted in a rather opaque manner to collect revenue on your behalf, and is also entitled to a commission. And for one quarter alone, you are paying 47 million Ghana cedis to that entity away from the cash waterfall mechanism. So it means that the beneficiaries of the cash waterfall mechanism are not, in ECG's view, are not needed within the value chain. Meanwhile, they are the ones generating the power for you to sell. Okay. So all of these explanations are clearly untenable. We really need a deeper dive, especially now that we are moving a conversation on the privatization of ECG. Okay. We need to know. It is possible that, and he has even confirmed it, that they are run per maybe 200, 500 accounts. Nobody knows.
Not 200, just 84. Okay, thank you so much, Kojo. Point well noted. Unfortunately, I have to let you go at this point in time. Let's shift our attention now to other stories here on the Pulse. The Foreign Affairs Ministry has released a fresh notice detailing individuals affected by President John Dramani Mahama's recall of all diplomatic and service passports. Well, we know that former ministers, MMDCs, and officers of the National Cathedral Project are among the list of persons expected to return their diplomatic passports. On your screens now, coming up shortly, is that statement, which is detailing that, and we'll be engaging an international relations expert, Dr. Ishmael Hovo, shortly. But let me just run you through that statement and some of the key things it says. It says that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs wishes to inform that it has been directed by the Office of the President to recall the diplomatic and service passports issued during the tenure of the previous administration of the underlisted category of officials, former ministers and spouses, former members of parliament irrespective of political affiliation, former members of the Council of State and spouses, former retired justices of the Supreme and lower courts, former regional ministers, metropolitan, municipal and district executives, chief executive officers of the state, chairs and members of board, officials of the National Cathedral Project, former political ambassadors and dependents, businessmen and entrepreneurs, religious and traditional leaders, former government functionaries, and all other persons holding official passports not currently serving in any official capacity for the state or otherwise holding any position that falls under the requirements of Section 6 and 7 of the Passports and Travel Certificates Act 1967. It goes on to say that the above-mentioned officials are to return their passports to the Legal and Treaties Bureau of the Ministries of Foreign Affairs not later than Friday, 24th of January. The recall exercise is to ensure a review of all diplomatic and service passports in line with the current eligibility criteria for issuance. It is further aimed at preventing misuse and safeguarding the integrity of the diplomatic and service passports. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs counts on the cooperation of all holders of diplomatic service passports to undertake this important exercise as directed. Ishmael Hovo joins me now. Thank you so much for your time. Let's look at the implications of this directive.
Good afternoon to yourself and your viewers. So ideally, this should not be, particularly if in relation to the former ministers and former government functionaries. It is normal that when your tenure expires, then diplomatic or service passport should automatically return to the state because it's a property of the state and it's given to you based on the position you are occupying. So I think that the directive is to ensure that we don't have people on diplomatic and service passport who are not actually supposed to have them. And so anybody with that passport will have to return it and then move on to the ordinary passport that all Ghanaians have, except the government in their judgment determines that you still need those passports to conduct business outside on behalf of that. So it is a step in the right direction. But I think that's a country must move away from where there's a change of government. People wait until the new administration starts to chase them for some of these things. For former ministers, former parliamentarians, once your tenure expires, these things should be naturally returned to the states.
Now, let's do some other stories now. Thank you so much, Doc, for your time here on The Pulse. Malian Prime Minister Abdoulaye Maiga arrives in Ghana, and we're looking at that. He's expected to deliver a special message from the Malian president to Ghana. And we're also looking at the implications of that. We know that Maiga is scheduled to meet President John Dramani Mahama on Thursday for discussions centered on the message from the president of Ghana. Now, he was warmly received at the airport by legal counsel to the president and Prosper Bani, the national security advisor. Well, experts in the regional integration believe that there may be more to this visit that meets the eye, especially in terms of regional integration. Now, on Zoom, joining me now is Emmanuel Bombande. He's co-founder and executive director of West African Network for Peace Building. Thank you so much for your time. Now, as an expert in regional integration, I'm just wondering, what is your interpretation of the Malian Prime Minister's visit to Ghana?
First of all, greetings to you and your viewers, but I need to make a correction. I have been out of ONEP since 2014, so I cannot be the executive director. Please, for your viewers to know that. Well, for me...
Thank you for the correction, and we'll update that as we speak. Please make your point.
Yes. For the visit of the Malian Prime Minister, I read into that the goodwill that is beginning to prevail within the context of the very important issues of regional peace and stability in West Africa, including the ECOWAS space, but also what we see developing in the Sahel. Now, this for me is significant precisely because of the leadership that has taken over as duty bearers of our republic, and because of the need in the region, and because of the track record of His Excellency President John Mahama in his first term, I'm not particularly surprised that this goodwill is beginning to prevail. And let us hope that it is the beginning of good things to happen. that responds to the challenges of restoring good relationships amongst our countries in our multilateral institution, ECOWAS, which then can increase the prospects for enhanced peace and security in West Africa.
Thank you so much for your time here on The Pulse. Now, we'll be taking a quick breather here on The Pulse. When we return, we have more in store for you. Please stay tuned in.